Okay, good. So today we are going to get through something. Actually, we have two tasks. The first task is a simple one, but important. I'm going to give you some tips when you are doing your exam question in your exam. Could be around 10 to 12, 20 to 20 minutes. And after that, we are going to see three practice exam questions. I'm going to get through those questions in a detailed way, maybe not that detailed, but I'm going to cover some economic principle behind those three questions. And more importantly, I want to let you know that how you should approach these questions if these are real exam questions um, in a few weeks or in a few months. Okay, good. So this is the first slide. Here are some exam tips and strategies for you, and you can think about that. 1 second. Just one. There's someone saying that they cannot hear me. I mean, I think it should be, just make sure that you log on, maybe log off and log back again to see if the audio is working. Someone else is saying that the sound is on. Okay, anyway. So the first one is about the first part is about the tips when answering questions. So basically, for LSE exams, especially for especially for exams at Department of Economics, you want to define some key terms. So you want to show that you understand some economic concepts, economic topics before you approach the real answer. What do we mean by that? Later, we'll see one question about game theory, and you're asked about the Nash equilibrium, and you are asked to find Nash equilibrium. Then, if you are having these sort of questions in your exam, perhaps a best way is to first briefly explain what a Nash equilibrium is, rather than simply get through the calculation and go through, arrive at the final answer without any explanation. So you want to define the key terms in a very concise, very brief way to make sure that you show your understanding behind those terminologies. That's the first one, the simple one. Second, explain your answer clearly. I mean, not most, but some of the students, they have very good technical skills. They are very good at arriving at the final answers. They know how to operate the algebra to find the final answers for each economic questions, but they don't explain anything at all. So on the answer sheet, it's just like 10 equations, like 10 inequalities without any further things. This is not a good strategy for LS exams. Since we are economics exam, we are not an exam for algebra only. Of course, knowing how to use the algebra arriving at the answer is important. Otherwise, you can't really answer something economic. But you need to understand once you finish your algebra or when you are doing your algebra, you need to explain why I'm doing this equation, why we have that equation. Not to do paragraph styles explanation, but at least for each line when you are doing algebra, you put one sentence or a very brief comments on what you are doing when you are operating the math. Okay, that is the most useful tip that I will let you know. And that's for today. Okay. If you only show the algebra, even if you have the final answer correct, perhaps you only get something like 50 or 60 out of 100 because we don't know if you understand the economics behind. We will demonstrate, as I mentioned, 3 questions later. You can see how I discuss those questions, how I argue those answers in a more economic way, which gives you supposedly more marks in your exams. Okay, so this is the key point for key tip when you're answering your questions. The exam is testing your ability to apply models and theory to different questions. So what do we mean by that? All right, I get one question. Is a diagram necessary for every question in section and in section B by some attendees? The thing is that it is not strictly necessary, but if you find a diagram easier for you to explain economic, and if you have already run through the problem sets already, for some questions it's easier to do with the diagrams, for some questions it's easier to do algebra. So if you find it is much easier to do with diagrams rather than algebra, then why not you do diagrams? Okay, so it really depends. I mean, for the questions asking me if it's necessary to have each problem, each question a diagram, I would say no, but maybe it is useful. Okay, so hopefully that answered the question. Good. So let me get back to my third bullet point. The exam is testing your ability to apply models and theory to different economy questions. That's true. We don't really want to see answers without economic model foundation. What do we mean by that? Sometimes when you're approaching your economic questions, you are not using the concept, you are not using the model or theories taught in the lecture, taught in discussing the problem set, discussing the Zoom live sessions. They are not really theory based. They are not founded. It is just some conjecture by yourself. Well, then you are not doing economics. I am not saying the answer is wrong, but it is not consistent. It could be a case that it is not consistent with the economic models that we cover. So make sure when you are doing your answers, stick to the economic model that you have already seen in the lectures or the problem sets, rather than develop a new one by yourself. In our exams, especially for this course, those questions are all closed. We will have a standard answer. We will have a model answer. They are not open-ended discussion questions. They are not essays. So make sure that you use the correct model, the good model to explain the answers. That's what I want to mention about the third point. Good. And the fourth point, the bullet point, label your diagrams properly. In case that you want to do diagrams, make sure that you do your diagrams correctly and properly. First, let's talk about the labels. What is the horizontal axis? What is the vertical axis? Label them. If you have intercepts on x-axis or y-axis, if you can keep the number, if the number is relevant, what are the numbers? What are the values there? Or what's the economic explanation behind the intercept? Explains a bit. And more importantly, make sure that you have good diagrams. What do I mean by that? If it's an indifference curve, and if it's curved, then curve it. If it's straight line, then straighten it. Just make sure that for me, I will always bring a ruler when I'm doing my diagrams. If it's straight, I want to make it super straight. If it's steep, if it's not steep, make sure that you draw your diagram properly. If you choose to explain your answer or argue your answer with your diagrams, then this is the crucial thing, right? Because you're not doing the algebra. Now the markers will check your answers looking through your diagrams, and they will be doubtful if you are having the diagrams very vague or very general. Okay? So make sure that you have all the elements on your diagrams clearly stated and clearly drawn. Okay? Especially like I've mentioned, the straight lines or curves. If it's connected, if there's a kink, whatever, make sure that you displayed it clearly on your diagram. Otherwise, the marker will think you're hiding stuff. Maybe you don't understand this in a very thorough way, then you will lose some mark because of that. If you are the one that if you are really not understanding everything, then it's fine. But if you actually understand all of the stuff, but you cannot demonstrate it properly, then you miss. It won't be too. It should be better if you can demonstrate it correctly, in a better way, so you don't lose marks. Okay, these are the tips that I want to offer you for answering the questions, especially for this course. I mean, for other econ courses, macro or metrics, at undergrad level, I believe that most of the questions are closed questions, so might as well you can try these. Now, I want to talk a little bit about the exam strategy. Timing, very important. You need to make sure you have good time management when you are doing the exam questions. You offer the exam paper, you're going to offer the exam paper. You will know what sort of questions are going to be there. You need to make sure that you allocate proper time on each question. Don't over-invest time on one certain or two certain questions because something is better than nothing. All right. If you're leaving blank for some question, for sure it's going to be zero. But if you write down something relevant, although it is not directly to the final answer, at least we can award partial mark for you. And the pass mark for the program should be 40. I mean, for the module should be 40. 0 and 40 is a big difference. As long as you offer something valuable in economics, we might as well give you a pass for that question. But if it's nothing, it should be zero. So the marginal benefit of writing down something is super high. Don't let Make sure don't leave any blanks for the answers for each question. So I will suggest you go through each question, maybe in a quick way, in a fast way, and when you stop, jump on to the next one, finish the ones that you are more comfortable with, and then go back to the ones you feel difficult, but don't leave blank. Okay? You need to be mentally prepared for that. Good. For some people, I know you want to start with short questions. Most of the students do start from short questions because of the order, but you can actually think about if you prefer to start from the long question. The long question, has a heavier mark for sure because they are long. Once you finish it, you might feel better, and then you continue to your short question. That could be another strategy, but it really depends on how you feel. I will suggest you to first scan over all the questions and pick the ones that you are more confident with, and then finish them in a quick way, then you go for the ones that you are less confident with. Otherwise, you might be too nervous when you are doing the exam. That's my personal preference. But no matter what your strategy is, make sure that before the exam, think about what you should do within the time frame. Okay? The third bullet point, reading time. Read carefully and decide which question you want to answer. I'm not sure about the exam format for this year, and I cannot comment in this webinar since this is not for that purpose. But I just want to let you know if you have the discretion to choose which question to answer, then perhaps during reading time, read carefully and stick to the one that you want to answer, and you don't have much time to regret and move to change to the other question. So read carefully when you're allocated the reading time. And also when you're answering for each question, there should be some clear instructions. Make sure that you follow the instruction before you approach the answers. So don't rush reading the questions. Make sure you understand what is asked in the questions and you do it in the proper way. We will see 3 PAX exam questions later, as I've mentioned. And I will try to explain why we need to read carefully. Okay, good. Now, before we get into the 3 questions that I'm going to cover within the 1 hour later, any questions regarding exams? I'll wait for 30 seconds. You can unmute yourself and speak, or you can put it in the chat, or there's a Q&A box that you can type questions. Anyone? I think someone raised your hand. Yeah. All right. I see one question there. Is Section 8 to be done online, well, Section B is going to be written and scanned and uploaded. I can't really answer this question for the exam format there. And to be honest, I don't really know. For this sort of questions, ask your class teacher. Okay? Sorry for not answering. Any other ones? Good. So now I'm going to cover 3 questions from the practice exam paper, and this is the 2025 version B. 2025 May version B. If you check the practice exam paper, this is the one. I extract 3 questions from this. I extracted 3 questions from that exam paper. 1 short question for question 5. 2 long questions I'm going to cover, which is question 3, 7, and 8. And you will see you will see how long it is when we do the 3 questions together. There is a question asking if the recording going to be uploaded for online. I'm not sure. Let's say no by default, but I will email my manager, the course manager, to decide whether or not we upload the recording. I hopefully can be there, but I cannot guarantee at this moment. Okay, good. There's another question. Is there a maximum word limit for section A? There is no maximum word limit for any questions. You can write as many as you want, but I don't recommend it. Why not? You have time limit. So if it's a short question, you should expect, let's say, if you write in the proper way, around 1 to 2 A4 page should be sufficient. You shouldn't spend too many minutes on each short question. There is a tip for you. Let's suppose you are given 3 hours for the full exam paper, and 1 short question only counts for, let's say, 12 marks. Then 3 hours times 0.12 should be the time allocated there, roughly. Okay. So again, as I've mentioned earlier, you need to manage your time wisely when you are doing the exam. Okay. We won't have word limits for sure, but ideally you shouldn't write too much. You should write concisely, powerfully, but not lengthy. There are many questions. Let me do. In section A, we are going to discuss all questions from intertemporal. We are going to discuss all questions from intertemporal budget constraint. I don't get that, but I am just saying that from this past exam paper, the 5th question is about the intertemporal budget constraint. I just took it as an example. How much working should we show since we have a scientific calculator? For example, simultaneous equations, do we have to show every working? No, I mean for the algebra in the middle, when you are rearranging the algebra from right to left or left to right, you don't need to include those lines in your answer because this is nothing to do with economics. Okay, write down how you argue the answer, but not the algebra details. You shouldn't include too many details in the middle. I mean, you need to answer in the economic way. I'm aware you don't know the exam structure. However, what difficulty level should we expect? I mean, in terms of the difficulty level, it should be more or less the same. That's why we offer the PAX exam paper for your reference. Okay? But there's a comment from you. 2022 and 2023 are extremely difficult, where 2025 was easier. Well, of course, for each year, sometimes it could be easier, sometimes it could be difficult. It really depends on which sort of topic you are more familiar with. And if you see a familiar question, you feel easier. And if it's unfamiliar questions, you feel harder, right? But anyway, in this case, the marks will be standardized. I mean, we'll try to, in terms of the marking, I believe it's going to be moderated, so don't worry too much. There should be a standardization process. But I would say you should expect the difficulty more or less the same as the past exam paper. Are you going to attempt 2025? Yes, I'm going to attempt 2025 May. Version B should be ZB past paper, but only for these 3 questions displayed on the slide. Is it necessary or recommended to include a diagram in general equilibrium answers, even when the decided not to? If you find a diagram explains your answer easier, then include it, but just make sure that you label all the elements in your diagram carefully so you are not hiding things. Okay? If the question is asking you to provide a diagram, is your choice to offer a diagram or not. If the question is asking you to give a diagram, then you need to give a diagram. Good. Do we do second order condition to show maximums or need to explain this intuition? Second order condition for the maximum, you don't need to explain the intuition behind because it's all about the math. It's all about the optimization program. That's from the Department of Mathematics. So you shouldn't, you can skip this intuition behind the second order condition, which is the sufficient conditions for the optimum. What about symmetric information questions? We will go through if we have time. Well, we will have one question regarding principal agent problem. There is a symmetric information issue between the principal agent. We will go through it a little bit. Do we explain each steps of the calculation or just the main step? Just the main step with economic meaning. That will be sufficient. Okay. This year it is the last exam for all state vessels, so will it be better? I can't really comment from that, and to be honest, I am independent to the exam writing team, so I have no clue. But I would say the difficulty should be more or less the same as the past exam paper, in average. Will we start with the long answer questions, though, might? Are you talking about that these sections or? I would say I will cover the 3 questions for sure. We have time, so let me just do it in my order. Things is decided this way. Sorry for that. I couldn't hear you answer properly about difficulty level. Can you let us know again? So basically, I'm just saying that you should expect the difficulty to the exam the same, similar to what you have seen in the past exam paper. The format should be, I shouldn't comment on that, but the format should be the same. The difficulty or how the question is going to phrase should be in some sense similar to the past exam paper questions. Okay. Just let you know, for your information, I have nothing to do with the exam writing progress. I didn't see anything on the exam paper. So, it's your, it will become your judgment to think about that. All right, I got some questions from the chat box. Well, let me get through this question before we see the exam questions. Would you please do the model of resource extraction questions? I don't really understand what you mean by resource extraction questions. Unfortunately, since this is the agenda for today, if it's extra, I think I'm not able to do that. Do we need to stick curves or sand from our school on our calculator? For this sort of policy things, please ask the department. Is it possible that the question can be made in a creative way? Again, I have nothing to do with the exam writing team. It has to be the professor, the instructors, which is, we need to be independent to that. So I don't really know if it's going to be creative, but you can have the reference from the practice and paper questions. If you think they are creative, perhaps they are creative. Resource extraction is in the last topic. It's about the externality. I'm sorry, today we are not going to cover that due to the time constraint. Okay, good. Any other questions? I'm pretty sure that I need to answer your questions in a very quick way because we have only 90 minutes. And I want to cover fully these three questions, especially advise you how to answer these questions in a good way so you have a higher mark at the end of the day. Well, this webinar, you mean the slides being sent to our emails? Because it's correct. Because it's recorded. I need to ask the manager that, again, I need to ask the manager if this recording is going to be posted on the platform, I think Canvas, or I don't know if you are using something else. It's not going to be into your email. But perhaps the recording will be online, but I cannot guarantee at this moment. I need to make sure that the manager is happy to do so. Okay, good. Any other questions about the exam? Do you decide? I decide the topic is a question. Okay, good. Any else? Is practicing only the present? Yes, it is enough. If we saw monopoly and monopoly, do you explain why is that? I just stated you need to explain why because this is something regarding economics. All right, I'll wait for 1 minute more. How to study for micro? I will say you need to make sure you understand each economic model that has been or theory has been mentioned in the lectures and also discussed in a live session by the class teachers. Not just memorizing the result because we are at LSE, we won't have memory question for you. So you need to know how to use the models. What else? Do we explain shapes of curves when drawing Monopoly, for instance? Suppose diagrams was an expert drawn anyway. For Monopoly, I think you are talking about marginal revenue curve, demand curve, and the marginal cost curve. If you have time, always better to explain briefly, but it is not, if it's not that crucial to your it's not that central to your answer, perhaps you want to spend more time on the core parts. Do topics repeat in long if they have, again, I have nothing to do with the exam writing team, so the answer is I don't know for the topic for this year. What will be the difficulty in this? I've answered it twice. Hopefully you have already heard about that. So the difficulty should be more or less the same. For this year, how many questions we need to answer for section B? Please email your class teacher or the program manager for that. I can't guarantee that. I mean, I don't know how many questions you need to answer for section B or if there is changing. Okay. Good. Now, guys, I think we need to move on for the exam questions. Otherwise, I'm not covering anything today. All right. You can throw your questions in the Q&A sessions or in the chat box. But yeah, when we get through these three questions, hopefully in a quick way, and I can answer your questions later. And again, things regarding what topics covered in the exam, what sort of format is in the exam for this year, I can't really give you the comment because I'm not allowed to do so. That's the first thing. The second thing is that I have no idea. I don't want to bias you because I am nothing to do with the department of writing of the exam writing. Good. Now, question 5. This is a short question from the PACS exam paper 2025 May ZB. So if you open the share folder, I think there is a folder or there's an area storing all the past exam papers throughout these past 5 years. You can have it open and you know what I'm talking about. This is the question. Just let you know, I just screenshot from the past exam paper. So I didn't change anything. This is what you see if you were the student sitting in May 2025 exam. Okay, so let's just read the question and then approach to the solution that I suggest you to do. The figure below shows the intertemporal budget constraints. The endowment point is Y0 and Y1. So time 0 is the period for today. Time 1 or period 1 is the period for tomorrow or for your future. You only live for 2 periods for simplicity. As the rate of interest increases, the budget constraint pivots around the endowment point as shown. Using the graph, explain that a saver cannot be using the figure, explain the saver cannot be a borrower if the rate of interest rises. Okay, good. So this is the full question. You are actually given all the results, all the claims, all the theorems, but you are asked to explain why this statement is true. You are not asking to answering this. You are not asked to answer whether or not this statement is true. You are asked to explain why this is the true statement. Okay, so this is the diagram. We need to make sure that we understand the diagram clearly before we do any other explanation. So first, if you can see, there is a budget constraint line in the intertemporal budget constraint line on the diagram, okay, which is the black line here. There is a bundle or there is a location, there is a point, which is Y0 and Y1. This is the endowment point for the consumer. So what do we mean by endowment point? The endowment is the income level. What do we mean by that? Today I earn Y0. Tomorrow I earn Y1 for my income. So Y0, Y1 will be a bundle, which is the endowment. What is the economy meaning behind the endowment? I'm not borrowing, I'm not saving. I eat up what I earn today, or I eat up I earn for each day. So today, if my income level is Y0, I consume Y0. Tomorrow, my income level is Y1, so I consume Y1. This should be an affordable bundle for my intertemporal consumption decision. Okay? But I can actually do something else. Suppose I want to eat more than the income in period 0, which means that C0 consumption in period 0, I want it to be greater than Y0. Would it be possible? By assumption, it would be possible, but you need to borrow income from your future self. What do I mean by that? I sort of consume something greater than Y0, so I'm choosing a bundle to the right-hand side of endowment point on the budget constraint line, on the intertemporal budget constraint line. But tomorrow, I can only enjoy something less than the income level Y1. Why is that the case? I eat more than what I earn today. For the difference, I borrow from someone else. It could be a bank, it could be a financial institution, it could be someone else. But tomorrow, I need to repay the debt by assumption. So when I repay the debt tomorrow, I cannot eat up to the income level Y1 tomorrow. I can only eat less than my income level. That's why you will have a combination, something greater than the income level for today, but something for less than your income level for tomorrow. So if I'm thinking about borrowing money from tomorrow to eat more from today, then I'm thinking about a bundle on the budget constraint line, but to the right-hand side of endowment. If that's the case, I'm a borrower. The other hand, suppose I want to save. What do I mean by that? I want to eat less than the income level today. So C0 is lower than Y0. If that's the case, I'm saving money. What do I mean by that? There's a difference between Y0 and C0. I earn more than I eat today. The difference becomes the saving into my saving account. Then, as exchange, tomorrow, after interest given, I can eat more than Y1, the income level for tomorrow. So if I'm a saver, I'm thinking about a bundle to the left-hand side of the endowment point. Okay? That is the economy intuition behind the saver and the borrower. Now, suppose I'm thinking about a higher interest rate. What happened to the budget constraint line? It is going to be steeper than before. Why is that the case? I want economy intuition. It is because of the fact that if the interest rate is higher, the cost of borrowing is more expensive, which means that if you want to eat more for today, if you want your C0 to be greater than before, then you pay much more than when we have a lower interest rate. That's why C0 is going to be more expensive. You have the budget constraint line with two different goods. When the price of one good becomes more expensive, the intercept should be smaller, because if you all in on that good, you can only enjoy less numbers or less units than before. So when we have a higher interest rate, the current assumption gets more expensive. Okay? Good. Now, after you understand this economic intuition, we need to have this on your answer sheet. So what are the key insights for these questions? If I were you, if I were the person sitting in the exam facing this problem, what will I do? I will first argue that the saver is going to choose a bundle on the left-hand side to the endowment point. For one example, bundle A. Okay? The higher interest rates gives me a steeper budget constraint line, pivoting against or rotating against the endowment point. Why the endowment point must be always on the budget constraint line, no matter what the interest rate is? It is because of the fact that you can always enjoy your income level for each period, regardless of your interest rate. What do I mean by that? If I don't care about the bank, if I don't care about saving or borrowing, I just eat up what I earn for each period. Then for today, I will eat up Y0. For tomorrow, I will eat up Y1. No matter what the interest rate is, because I'm not saving, I'm not borrowing. And what's the story? What's the outcome behind it? Behind this story? The endowment point should be always available, should be always affordable on any single budget constraint line. It should be there. That's why when we are changing the interest rate, we are just changing the slope, but we never change the fact that the endowment point is on the budget constraint. Okay? Good. Now, the fourth one, yeah. Now we want to really argue the statement is correct. A saver cannot become a borrower if the interest rate rises. Why not? I mean, for the first scenario, we have a lower interest rate. So I have the solid budget constraint line on the diagram. I choose A rather than something to the right-hand side because I'm assumed to be a saver. Okay. This is telling me I prefer bundle A over any bundle in this budget set. So under this triangle, A is the best. That's why I choose A. Okay. Suppose under the second scenario, I have a higher interest rate, so I'm changing my slope of my budget constraint line, making it steeper. If I change my mind to be a borrower, you are telling me I'm choosing a bundle to the right-hand side of the endowment point on the dashed budget line. Okay. So what will be the conclusion at this moment? You prefer B rather than any bundle inside this budget set, bounded by the dashed line. Okay. Now you have a contradiction. Under the first scenario, when we have a lower interest rate, you said you prefer A rather than B because B is inside your budget set. Now, when we are facing a higher interest rate, you are saying you prefer B rather than A. You don't have a stable preference relation, which makes a contradiction. It couldn't be the case. So that's why a saver under a lower interest rate, if you are a saver, it should be the case that you're still being a saver under a higher interest rate. It couldn't be the other way around. Otherwise, you'll find two bundles contradicting with each other regarding their preference. Okay? So that's the key economy intuition behind. I think I got the relevant question. Does it mean that we have to draw a diagram again and point out A and B to explain on this basis, or can we just explain without drawing a diagram again on a paper? Both are fine. Answer it properly, and once you cover the key insights that I mentioned here, you are very good. Okay, since this is just, the difference between this diagram and the one given is just A and B, so you don't really need to redo it again. But how come if we do income and substitution, in fact, that goes the opposite directions for higher interest rate, we don't know what will happen. So if you're doing the income and substitution effect, the substitution effect is actually more relevant in this case because now I'm changing the price between C0 and C1. Now C0 is more expensive, C1 is less expensive. Okay, so you should have this incentive to spend more income or to allocate your bundle with more C1, less C0, which is consistent. Okay. Why answer say B? Oh, I think I have this already. Why the answer say B were already available? What does it mean? All right, good. So look, when we are facing a lower interest rate, bundle B is inside the budget set, right? So it is available. B is not outside the boundary of the budget constraint line when you are having a low interest rate, the solid one. So it is available. Meaning that given two different levels of interest rates, both A and B are available. But yesterday you prefer A, today you prefer B. That makes the difference. That makes the contradiction. This one is good. So this graph assumes the substitution effect outweighs the, I see, why is that income effect? Perhaps you are typing IE. Can we also discuss this in an answer? You can, but for this question, it's a little bit too extra. I think it is outside what the question is asking. Okay. In higher interest rates, steep budget constraint line, and in low interest rate, flat budget constraint line. Yes, that's true. How do we know that a higher interest rate leads to a steeper budget constraint line? Good question. So let me go through the intuition again. If the interest rate is higher, it is more expensive for you to consume today because you are going to give out more interest from the saving if you save. So C0 is more expensive. C1 is less expensive in this case. Okay? That's why good you can imagine C0 and C1 are two goods. Now C0 is more expensive for sure, and then so you will see a lower intercept. And for C1, it is less expensive, so we'll see a greater intercept. That's the intuition. If you really want to, you can do with the algebra and find the slope. Okay, the slope of this budget constraint line should be 1 over 1 plus R, so R goes up, slope goes up. Okay, that's the thing. Good. Great. So these are the key insights that you need to put down on your answer sheet if this is the question. If you don't explain, all right, maybe I get to the next slides. So these are the things that I would want you to do. First, you want to define the positions. What do we mean by saver? What do we mean by borrower? To consume something to the left of the endowment point, we are the saver. And if it's right, we are the borrower. The effect of the interest rate rise, budget constraint pivots around the endowment point. A new budget is steeper, which is the deadline. You need to specify this, right? And this key argument to become a borrower, this is all about the position of the bundle. And the second bullet point is the most crucial one. The two bundles, A and B, are available given any situation, so you should have the consistent preference, either A or B. So A is preferred over B in the very beginning, so it should be a case that it is always preferred, not B over A. All right, we get more questions. If interest rate lowers, then what would be the case? If interest rate lowers, you will see a flatter budget constraint line. Okay. Now, we don't know much about this since now A is not available anymore, the choice that you have already chosen before is no longer available. So I don't have the reveal preference argument working anymore. You need more other assumptions to answer this question. Okay. So here we don't take SE and IE in account. We only take the substitution effect in account because it's sufficient to only look at the substitution effect. Good. Now, I'll wait for 30 seconds for question 5. Otherwise, we get through the game theory one. I got one question from the chat box. Will this earn 4 marks? Of course not. I mean, these are the bullet points that's for you. You need to make it more narrative in your answers, not like bullet points on my slides. But once you do it in a proper way, you'll earn maybe not 4 marks, but very close for 4 marks. At LSC is not only the correctness of the answers, it's also, you need to argue your answer correctly and in a rigorous way. Any other questions about the intertemporal budget constraint? No? All right, now game theory. I might need to speed up if I want to cover all the 2 remaining questions, and let's try. So this is a long question there are actually two parts. There are part A and part B. Let me just show the part A for you, and then I will continue part B later. Part A is all about a strategic foreign game. So consider a strategic foreign game below with two players, 1 and 2. I have player 1 as the role player. I have player 2 as the column player. For each player, they are given 3 strategies. So for player 1 is A1, B1, and C1. For player 2 is A2, B2, and C2. Okay. So we have a 3x3 matrix. Inside the matrix, there are payoff vectors. Hopefully it's already clear. All right, the first element is for player 1, the second element is for player 2. And you need to do the following 2 things. The first thing is, let's suppose the X, or there is an unknown in the 9th cell. Let's suppose this is 0. Solve the game by iteratively eliminating strictly dominating strategies. Okay, that is the first task you want to do. And later on, I'm going to assume X to be 8, eliminate it again, and then find a pure and mixed Nash equilibrium of the game. So how do we do this? 1 second. Sorry. When X is 0, I want to eliminate by the first steps. The first one, if I'm player 1, I will never ever play A1 because B1 is always better than playing A1. And why? I'm player 1. If I play A1, what will I get at the end of the day? Depending on the choice of player 2. If the choice of player 2 is A2, I get 2. If they choose B2, I get 4. If they choose C2, I get 0. However, if I play B1, under any circumstance, I will earn a strictly higher payoff than playing A1 because 4 is strictly greater than 2, 6 is strictly greater than 4, and 2 is strictly greater than 0. Okay? So if I'm a rational player, what will I do? I won't consider A1 at all because B1 is the better strategy for me. The payoff structure strictly dominates the one from playing A1. So I eliminate A1. That is from the perspective of the player 1. Now I only have 2x3 matrix. It could be easier. All right, let's see if we can eliminate more. Let's think about if I'm player 2. If I'm player 2, I won't play A2. Why? Because C2 is better than A2. Why? If player 1 is playing B1, then if I play C2 as player 2, I get 2. But if I play A2, I only get 0. If player 1 is playing C1, I'm player 2. If I play C2, I get 6. If I play A2, I get 4. So 2 is greater than 0. 6 is greater than 4, both in a strict way. So it shouldn't be a case that a rational player 2 is playing A2 at any equilibrium. So we can eliminate A2 for sure. Now it becomes a 2x2 matrix. Things get much easier. For 2x2 matrix, I do the investigation again from the perspective of player 1. I observe that player 1 will be happy to play B1 rather than C1 because 6 is greater than 4, 2 is strictly greater than 0. So it makes 0 sense that player 1 is playing C1. So I eliminate C1. Now it becomes a 1x2 matrix. I mean, it looks easy, but let me do the elimination again. Since 8 is greater than 2, so player 2 won't play C2. The only solution at equilibrium should be player 1 playing B1 and player 2 playing B2. Okay? Good question. I got one very good question from the Q&A. Does the order of eliminating dominant strategy matters? No. No. If you do the process, but you take the second step from my slide as the first one, you will have the exactly same result. Okay? It does not matter. So whenever you see a dominant, you do the dominant, you do the elimination directly. You don't need to worry about which elimination you should do first. No. Good point. Good. So the final solution is B1 and B2, and this gives us a pure Nash equilibrium. Okay. I want to emphasize one thing. The pure Nash equilibrium is B1 and B2, meaning player 1 is playing B1, player 2 is playing B2. It is not 6-8. 6-8 is the resulting payoff given the equilibrium play. B1 and B2 is the equilibrium strategy. If you are asked to solve for the Nash equilibrium, you are providing a strategy. You are not giving the resulting outcome. If you say the Nash equilibrium is 6-8, you are equivalently saying player 1 wants to play 6 and player 2 wants to play 8. This is not what is defined. Okay? So make sure that you specify the equilibrium properly. So you write down the strategy. Any questions for 7A? This one should be quick. All right. Now for 7A2, I forgot there are 2 steps. Sorry. So for part 2, 7A, suppose X equals 8. We can do the elimination again, but you will stop when we have a 2x2 matrix because now this number is 8, no longer 0. You don't have the strict dominance. In part 1, 6 is greater than 2, 4 is greater than 0. So you eliminate C2. Sorry, 6 is greater than 4 and 2 is greater than 0. So you eliminate C1. Now, 2 is no longer greater than 8. So there is no elimination possible up to this moment. So we will stop here with a 2x2 matrix. Then we want to find a pure Nash equilibrium. What should we do? We need to check the best responses. What do I mean by that? You need to check these 4 bullet points. So let's get through the first one. Suppose I'm player 1. Suppose player 2 is playing B2, this column. Then what will be my best response? If I'm player 1, player 2 is playing B2, I will play B1 rather than C1 because if I play B1, I get 6. If I play B2, I only get 4. 6 is greater than 4, so my best response is to play B1 if I know player 2 is playing B2. Okay? You do the best response discussion one by one, and you'll have 4 results. For simplicity, you underline the resulting payoff in the 2x2 matrix, and you see we have 2 pure Nash equilibrium in this case. It is B1, B2, and C1, C2. Okay? Hopefully, you're familiar with how to find the pure Nash equilibrium by finding their best response. Let's see if we have one. Do we have to, there's one question from the box. Do we have to reconstruct the matrix this time once we eliminated the matrix? I mean, it's 8-mark question is expected because I don't think otherwise it's showing. You don't need to do a lot of matrices. I believe, I will say you write down the steps in lines one by one without doing the matrix 5 times or 4 times is sufficient. Because there is always the standard answer on, when they are marking your answers. So as long as your argument is correct, it shouldn't be necessary to have the matrix all the time whenever you want to do one elimination. Okay, good. Now, again, make sure that you have your pure Nash equilibrium B1, B2, C1, C2, rather than 6, 8, and 8, 6. Now I want to find before I find the mixed Nash equilibrium, if I were you, if I were sitting in this exam, I was asked about the pure Nash equilibrium. I will include 1 line or even 2 to briefly explain the definitions of a Nash equilibrium. So a Nash equilibrium is a strategy such that each player is best responding with each other. I mean, at least put one very brief but concise line to explain to the marker saying, I understand what a Nash equilibrium is. And you get some point from that. All right. So the marker will be convinced that you are not only memorizing the steps of finding a pure Nash equilibrium, but also understand why this sort of method works for the Nash equilibrium investigation. Good. Now let's move to mixed Nash equilibrium. We have the 2x2 matrix here. An easy way to find the mixed Nash equilibrium is just to assume player 1 is playing B1 with probability P, C1 with probability 1 minus P, and player 2, Q1 1 minus Q for the two columns. And you write down the difference condition. Player 2 has to be indifferent between B2 and C2, given player 1 is playing P and 1 minus P on B1 and C1. What is the expected payoff if I play B2? I'm player 2. I will get 8 if player 1 plays B1. I will get 0 if player 1 plays C1. So what is the expected payoff? 8 times the probability P that player 1 plays B1. 0 times the probability such that player 1 is playing C1. So I get only 8P. What is the expected payoff for player 2 if they play C2? They will get 2 with probability P. There will be 6 with probability 1 minus P. So this will be the expected payoff. I need to make sure these two numbers are exactly the same, so player 2 is happy to play a mixed strategy. And the only way to make it indifferent is to make sure that player 1 is playing 1/2 for P. This is one of the two indifference conditions. You work from the perspective of player 1 to solve for the equilibrium value for player 2, which should be 3/4 on B2, 1/4 on C2. So the mixed Nash equilibrium will be P equals 1/2 and Q equals 3/4. This should be already covered in the lecture or in the live sessions by your class teacher. Hopefully it should be fine. Okay. I got another question. I mean, we need to really focus on the player not being incentivized rating right for the PSNE, pure strategy Nash equilibrium question. Yes, so basically when you want to check for a Nash equilibrium play, there are two ways. The first way is to do the best response check like I did here. The second way to do so is to conjecture, suppose B1, B2 is a Nash equilibrium, and you find there is no one have incentive to deviate from the strategy unilaterally. It's equivalent. Now for 7B, looks a little bit strange. This is extensive form game with two players, player 1 and player 2. There is another question, sorry, before I get into this extensive form. Do we draw a diagram for mixed Nash equilibrium with P and Q on the axis? No, you don't need to do so. I believe it's not necessary. I know what you are trying to say. You want to find the mixed point for the mixed Nash equilibrium, but it is not necessary for this question or for most of the questions in the undergraduate level. Okay, so it should be a no. Good. This one already answered. All right, let me focus on 7B. Player 1 is choosing A, B, C at the very beginning, and player 2 make their own choice, depending on the choice from player 1. Let's first focus on the right-hand side, it looks easier. Player 1 choosing A3, then player 2 can choose either C1 and C2, and these are the final payoff vectors, given different strategy choose. And player 1, if player 1 is choosing A1 or A2, there is an information set between these two nodes. Okay? What do we mean by information set? Player 2 does not know if player 1 is choosing A1 or A2. That is one there is one justification, but it's not that precise. A more precise justification, intuition is saying that player 2 can only choose B1 on one side or B1 on both sides or B2 on both sides. They don't have the flexibility to choose B1 on the left and B2 on the right hand side, or B2 on the left hand side, B1 on the right hand side. The two game nodes must with the exactly same strategy chose by definitions of the information set. Okay, so that's the rule of the information set. So the question is asking you to find a pure Nash equilibrium and a pure strategy subimperfect Nash equilibrium of this game. And let's focus on the pure Nash equilibrium first. So if I want to find a pure Nash equilibrium for the extensive form, the easiest way and the most recommended way from me for the exam purpose is to transform the extensive form back to the normal form. I want to see the matrix form again. But you need to be very careful about the strategy. For player 1, it's very clear that there are 3 strategies. A1, A2, and A3. Fine. But for player 2, it looks a little bit strange. Player 2 actually has 2 choices. There's one choice on the information set. There's another choice on the subgame here. So, how many strategies are there for player 2? There are actually 4, because there are 2 possibilities here for the information set, and there are 2 possibilities here for the subgame here. So you will see 4 possible strategies for player 2. Notice that the strategy for any single player is the strategy plan. So you are given extensive form, you need to specify the action chosen at each game node to be a strategy. So to fully specify a strategy for one player, especially in this case for player 2, I need to know what they are going to do in this information set and what they are going to do if the game goes to this node regarding C1 and C2. So you will make a 3x4 matrix, which gives you 12 cells. And how do I investigate the payoff? Let's do for only the first cell, just for example. The first cell is saying that player 1 is choosing A1. Player 2 is choosing B1 and C1. So B1 and C1. Okay? Let me run the game from the very beginning. Player 1 choose A1 and player 2 choose B1. So the ending point will be 0, 1. That's why in this cell we have the payoff structure 0, 1. You can do the remaining 11 cells by this sort of argument to find a final outcome. It looks a little bit scary because you need to do 11 times. But once you know how to find it, you simply start the game from the very beginning, and according to their strategy choose, you find a destination, and there is a payoff vector, you just put it in. Now, after you have this 3x4 metric game, you forget everything about extensive form. You simply find the pure Nash equilibrium by investigating the best response as before. Okay. How come B1 is grouped together with C1? So B1, C1 is saying that I want to choose B1 when I am in this information set. I want to choose C1 when I'm on this node. So for a full specification of the strategy of player 2, it has to be 2 elements, 1 from the left and 1 from the right. Okay. Now, yes. These are the strategies set as a summary. I will find pure Nash equilibrium. So how do I write down a pure Nash equilibrium? I actually have 3 in this example. A2, B1, C1, and A2, B1, C2, A1, B2, C1. Is there a maximum number of pure Nash equilibrium that can present in this game? If so, how do we find it is necessary for this module? This is not necessary for this module. This is more advanced folk theorem. and we talked about the numbers of equilibria. That is already out of scope of this module, so you don't need to know what's the possible, then what sort of numbers of equilibria in this game is possible. We have theorem in microeconomics, but it is already outside, so we don't really want to cover that. Okay, good. So these are the three pure Nash equilibria. Now, for subimperfect Nash equilibrium, what's the difference between pure Nash equilibrium and subimperfect Nash equilibrium? For subimperfect Nash equilibrium, we need subimperfection. And if you look at this subgame here with C1 and C2, it is not rational for player 2 to choose C2 if the subgame is played on the equilibrium path. Because if they choose C2, they get 0. If they choose C1, they get 1. Okay? So, if we go back to the pure Nash equilibrium check, we will see C1 and C2. We will see C2 in one of the equilibrium. Is it rational? Is it pure Nash equilibrium? It is actually pure Nash equilibrium. But we don't have subimperfection. But why it is the case that we have C2 here under a pure Nash equilibrium? Look, player 1 is playing A2 in this case. So this C1, C2 subgame is never ever played. So no matter what is chosen on the never ever play subgame, player 2 should be indifferent because it's not affecting the outcome at all. That's the intuition. Why under pure Nash equilibrium, you might have some equilibrium without subimperfection, but as a refinement, we want to remove this sort of irrational choice from player 2. That's why we only keep the 2 with C1 rather than C2. Another question, do we have to explain why these are pure strategy Nash equilibrium like show Pelson greater and the player not being selected? Yes, you need to show it for 4 marks. Again, you need to argue your answer. If you only show the final answer, it is not sufficient. But in a concise way, think about the time constraint. Okay. Any questions regarding the extensive form? I think I got one question from the previous question. If player 1 choose B1, isn't the pay of A greater than 2 instead of 6 greater than 4? A greater than 2, 6 greater than 4. A greater than 2, 6 greater than 4. I can't. If player 1 choose B1, 8 is I don't really understand this question. I'm sorry. Yeah, I mean, check the solution from the lecture again, and hopefully you will see. And if you have any doubt, ask your class teacher, please. Why A1B1? All right, good. Why A1B2C2? A1B2C2. So this one cannot be a Nash equilibrium. Let's do this. Suppose I'm player 1. I choose A1. You are player 2. You choose B2 under the information set, and you choose C2 on the right-hand side. We want to see if everyone is best responding. So given player 1 knows that player 2 is choosing B2 here and C2 here, what is the best response for player 1? What will you do if you are player 1? Will you choose A1? If you choose A1, you earn pay of only 1 here. But if you choose A3, you get 2. 2 is greater than 1. So you will have incentive theory from A1 to A3. In other words, A1 is not your best response, given that player 2 is playing B2, C2. That's why I underline the 2 here. A3 is the best response, given player 2 is playing B2, C2. So A1, B2, C2 is not a Nash equilibrium. Okay? Any other questions regarding the game theory? Someone, can you explain again how to find a subgame perfect Nash equilibrium? Sure. So for subgame perfection, I need to identify subgame first. Actually, I have two subgames. One is obvious, one is not that obvious. The obvious one is here. So if I start a game from the game node here regarding C1 and C2, I only get one. I get one if I play C1. I only get zero if I play C2. With the subgame perfection, I need to make sure player 2 is choosing C1 by definitions of the equilibrium concept. That's the definitions of the equilibrium. I force player 2 to play C2 because it's more rational. The second subgame is actually the entire game. Okay, so I need to make sure that the entire game is the players are playing a Nash equilibrium under this entire game. Since I have already found a Nash equilibrium here, where we have 3, I just need to make sure I have my pure Nash equilibrium previous discussed with the strategy chosen as C1. So I can only have these two to be subgame perfect Nash equilibrium. Okay. For the subgame perfect equilibrium, why do we reject C2? Because look at this subgame, I'm player 2. If I choose C2, I get 0, like nothing. If I choose C1, I get 1, something. I want something greater than 0, so I should choose C1. I need subgame perfection. Why the subgame not A1 and A2 not together? Why is the subgame not A1 and A2 not together? You mean this one, I believe. All right, good. So a subgame must start from a game node, and once you extend further, there's no branches involved. There is no external branches involved. We call it a subgame. So first, this is an information set. This is not one game node, so I cannot really, break this information set by definition of a subgame. So I have no hope to find a subgame starting from either the node from left-hand side or right-hand side. Not to mention altogether, since this is not one game node. It is an information set. Okay. Fine. Good. Do I have questions? All right. Great. Any other questions regarding game theory? No. Good. Now let's quickly get through question 8. I mean, question 8 is actually a more complicated economy problem, but we don't have much time to cover, so I will just point out things that you should. I would just advise how you answer this question if this is exam question. I won't go too deep through the economic intuition behind each subpart. Okay. So this is a principal agent question. I am a risk-neutral principal who only cares about expected profit. I want to hire someone for me to work. That person will call in an agent, work on a project, and I need to pay the wage for his effort. The agent, my worker, utility function is as follows. Then note that we have a square root on the wage. So W is the wage received from me minus the effort cost. If they want to do some effort, they need to, pay the cost for effort. There are two efforts, E1 or E2. E1 is the high effort level. E2 is the low effort level. So you see, 3 is, high effort level gives us a higher cost on effort. And E2, low effort, they only cost 2 units of utility level for exerting a low effort. Okay. If the agent chooses the high effort level E1, the probability of a successful project, which yields 100 pounds of revenue, and the principal collects the revenue fully with probability 1/2. And if it's failure, you got nothing with another probability 1/2. If the agent chooses low efforts, which is E2, then the probability of success is only 1/4. With 3/4, you will fail and get 0. The outside option or the reservation utility of the agent is 0. Okay. Now, suppose your wage can be contingent on the outcome, on the output, whether it's 100 or 0. So WH is the wage if 100 is yield from the project, and WL is the wage if 0 profit is yield from the project. Okay. Suppose the principal can write this sort of contract. Then we have 4 subparts. The first 2 parts is assuming that the effort is observable. You are asked to argue that the principal should optimally pay the fixed wage, and you are asked to informally explain the intuition. Also, you are asked to find the effort level that the principal should implement. This is the slides for you that you need to include, not include, but you need this sort of economy argument for a 4 mark. So A, why the fixed wage is optimal when the effort is observable? This is the inequality for reference only. I know for some of you, it could be a little bit scary. But the thing is that since my agent is risk averse, if I design a contract such that with 100 revenue, I give you more money, with 0, I give you less. Given that you are risk averse, given that the agent is risk averse, they will ask for a higher premium to cover the risk. What do I mean by that? If I just give them the average of the two wages, I mean, WH and WL, let me just take the average and I give you the certain wage regardless of the outcome of the project. You will feel safer, you will feel better, and you won't ask for the risk premium. I'm risk neutral as a principal, so I'm happy to take all the risk from the project. So the best thing to do is just to offer you a fixed rate rather than giving you 2 different ways depending on the outcome of the project. I'm happy to absorb all the risk for you. And by doing so, I can offer you a relatively low fixed rate for the work. That's why you will have the fixed rate offered at the equilibrium. Okay. And part B is asking you to find the optimal effort level. Suppose the suppose the principal wants the agent to do high effort level, which is E1. What is the constraint? The only constraint is the participation constraint. You need to make sure that the expected utility for the agent is is greater than the outside option or the reservation value, which is 0 by assumption. So if you solve for the algebra, you need to offer a fixed wage of 9. And if it's low effort induced, then it's just 4. It looks like 4 is better than 9 because you are paying a lower cost for your labor, but that's not true when you count the revenue. You only cares about your expected payoff. What is your expected revenue? If they do high effort, by assumption, with 1 high probability, you will get 100. But if they only exert low effort level, then only 1/4 by assumption. And obviously, also, 41 is greater than 21. So the best option for the principle is to do E1 with 9. Okay. Can you please explain EU contingent weight equation again, please? All right. Let me briefly discuss this a little, scan through this a little bit, but this is not like super necessary for a 4-mark answer, but just let you know this is the algebra involved. The expected utility given contingent weight is this because if we are going to have a high effort level with probability 1/2, the principal will pay WH to the agent because with probability 1/2, the project is successful. We earn 100, but we need to give the agent WH by contract. Why we have the square roots? Because by assumptions, the utility of the agent is with the square root. That is some sort of the risk aversion. That's why we have this term. With another probability 1/2, you will have to pay the agent WL. Again, for utility curving, there's a square root. So this is expected utility. Do we have to prove that the agent's risk averse? You don't need to prove it. You just need to explain that square root is a concave function, so it is risk averse by definition. Okay, good. I need to speed up a bit. Now, suppose C and D, we are having the effort level not observable. What sort of optimal contract that the principal should offer the agent? And you want to compare the two scenarios where the effort is observable or not observable and comments on it. The only difference, but actually is a big difference, that's the problem which the principal is facing is about the incentive compatibility constraint. If the effort level is unobservable, then we need this incentive compatibility constraint introduced into the maximization problem for the principal. Why? Because now the agent has the discretion to decide whether to exert high or low effort level. There is no direct control on the effort level exerted by the agent by assumption. But as a principal, I want to induce them to do high level. If that's the case, then I need to design the wage level as this bit for such that this inequality holds. So on the left-hand side, this is the expected utility for the agent if they do high effort. 1/2 and 1/2. This is the probability that the project is successful. This is the probability that the project is a failure. On the right-hand side, this is the probability that is successful given that the agent is doing low effort. And 3/4 is the probability such that the project is failure. All right. -2 and -3 are the effort caused by assumption at the very beginning. Rearrange the algebra and you will find this inequality. This is telling us the spread must be greater than 4. If the spread is not greater than 4, look, I'm an agent. If I exert a high level of effort, if I exert low effort of effort, I always get more or less the same thing according to the outcome. Then why I want to do the high effort to pay for the 3 units of this utility? I don't want to. So the wage scheme must be the case that the spread is sufficiently large. So I'm happy to, I'm happy to pursue the WH rather than WL. That is why we need to have an incentive competitive constraint here. Okay? Participation constraint, it is exactly the same as before when we have the effort observable. Now, I have 2 constraints. I just need to solve for the equation, solve for the two unknown 2 equation system, and then I will get 25 for WH and 1 for WL. And once I calculate principal profit, I found 37. Now we can compare the 2 parts. Observable, I get 41. Unobservable, I get only 37. Their difference is 4 in profit. Okay. Now, what drives this difference is about the information asymmetry from the action of the agent. If I have the control on the effort level from the agent, then I don't need to pay for. Now, because I don't have the direct control, I'm introducing a new constraint um, inside my maximization problem. So I lose a little bit in this case for good. Here are some key insights. I think I don't have much time to get through it because it's already overdue. Let me give you something. Let me send you the file before I leave. Can I? Wait. I'm not able to. Wait 1 second. Web inspect. All right, not. Why not? I don't have the discretion. All right, good. Let me check about the Q&A before we end this meeting. Can you please show the slides with part C and D solution? All right, now please, if you can, if you want to screenshot it, you can screenshot it because I have no availability to send files throughout the webinar chat box. Okay, so this is the solution for part C. If you want to screenshot it, I'll wait for 5 seconds. Okay. And also D. So you need these key insights for a better mark in your exam paper, exam. I'm very sorry that I'm running out of time, so I can't really cover question A in a better sense. But still, I hopefully this this webinar is helping you to understand when you are doing the answers for those exam questions in real time, in your re-exam. You know what the strategy you need to implement for a higher mark. Okay. All right, very last question. Do we have to show IC and PC for each effort, whether it binds or doesn't? You don't need to show it is binding or not binding because it must be binding for optimality, but you just explain why it must be binding. Since there cannot be IC and what's that? Oh, low effort. By default for agent selecting. Since there cannot be actually, there is an IC constraint for low effort, but it is going to be slack. I don't want to cover it too much. The IC is there, but the principal won't care much about the incentive competitive constraint for low effort in the induction because they would rather set the flat weight. I mean, the fixed wage to the agent rather than doing something different because of the fact that we really want the agent to ease their mind about the risk. So there's no incentive for them to do the high, to separate the wage. All right. Good. I'm really running out of time, but I have to say for 5 more minutes. Is there any questions? I mean, general ones I can answer. Otherwise, I will close this meeting for 5 minutes. And thank you very much for coming, by the way. For those who are already, midnight, I understand some of you are from Asian countries or even, I don't know where you will be. It's already midnight. And thank you for attending. I hope this session is going to be helpful. 5 more minutes. I mean, until 7:40 in London time, I will shut this down. Before that, if you have any questions, I can answer. I mean, only general ones. Could you show slide 18, please? All right, slide 18. Good. All right, I'm happy for you to screenshot question A. So I will scroll down my slides from 18 till the end every 20 seconds. Okay. At the meantime, any other questions? If let's say EH leads to a 2, yes, you are correct. If the incentive, if it's too costly to do the incentive, it really depends on the 100 and 0, right? If it's just 1 and 0, perhaps you don't want your agent to do hard work because you won't earn much given that do hard work. So there will be no incentive to incentivize if the expected profit, I mean, the revenue is too low. You are correct in intuition. Good. All right. 19. Any tips for prepare for finals? Understanding? No, you shouldn't memorize equations only. We are LSC, unfortunately. I mean, when we are marking papers, we try to see if you understand the theory in a good way because, everyone can memorize those equations. The equations are not many for your module, right? So everyone can memorize. So if you are just demonstrating the equations, then it's not going to help. I mean, for a pass, of course, it should be. For a third, maybe it should be. I mean, it should be. But if you are thinking about something greater than 70, your answer must be understanding. And how to be understanding, you need to show that you understand the equations behind. This is the question she's okay. Is there any strict notation to be followed like by? No, 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 no. As long as you use Greek letters and write it properly, there is no restrictions, whatever Greek letter you want to do. But of course, for economists, we have some convention on something. So perhaps if the questions have the notation defined already, then use the notation from the from 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 the question itself. And if you want to denote something that is not defined in the question, then of course give one very short line, let beta be something, and then you can do it with beta. Okay, this is size 20, but actually this is from the tax exam paper. You have it in your share folder. 21. Okay, 22. Probably out of topic, but how would things change if the agent was not risk averse, just curious? If the agent is not, if both agents and principal are risk neutral, we all care about the expected payoff. It will be, I mean, the payoffs will offset with each other. And how do I incentivize? You can try to just to remove the just to remove the square root, and you will see you will get something different. But still, my conjecture is that the wage gap won't be that big because you don't need to compensate for the risk aversion anymore. But still, you need to incentivize the agent to do efforts. So there should be a wage gap between WH and WL. What's my full-time job? I'm a fellow at LSC. At this time, do you recommend practicing as many? Yes, I recommend you go through all the tax exam paper to take a look at how the question will be phrased. That is a yes, a big yes. Any advice that you give us for upcoming exam? I don't really know for other subjects, but for microeconomic exams at LSE, you really need to know how to operate the algebra. Besides that, for those who are aiming for 70 plus, you need to know how to explain things in a concise way, not like a very lengthy paragraph, but concise and powerful way. Any advice? Good. Would it lead to the principal requiring offer more than wasted salary? It shouldn't be the case if we have the risk neutral agent. If both If both new agent and principal are neutral, the principal will demand a fixed proportion. Fixed proportion, what do we mean by that? And the agent will get the reason. Well, you are talking about other models, not the models that we are talking about today. Yeah. In our model today, there's no assumptions for the principal to share bonus to the agent. Could you show the answers on question 7B? Yes, of course. Answers. Okay. Okay, let me start from here. 1, 2, 3. Okay, good. What would you say the most demanding chapter in this module? I really don't know, to be honest. It really depends on how good you are in game theory. Some students find game theory most challenging. Some find general equilibrium most challenging. It should be either of the two. But well, I mean, just try your best to prepare to understand everything, and you will be good. Any other requests about my, showing the screens? Thank you for the comment, but yeah. Well, some of us have to get a 70. Good point, but I've mentioned several times, to be honest. First, argue the answer correctly, concisely. Second, make sure that you discuss economy intuition behind the result. It's very difficult, especially for undergraduate level students, to discuss correct intuition behind, but try your best. Okay? Guys, I really need to leave within 5 minutes. Let's say 3, I shouldn't extend again and again. Okay? So just in case that you want me to show the slides again, I can be here for 3 more minutes. Otherwise, feel free to leave the chat and best wishes, good luck for your future. I mean for the exam happening later on, also for the future in your journey, even after graduation. Hopefully it's going to be good. Okay? And don't get too stressful. Try your best. For us, we don't really want to fail students. So yeah, I mean, for a pass should be a no problem as long as you want to do something. But for first, you need to know how to do things in a good way. What do examiners look out for? I mean, again, how you argue the answer. What we don't really want to see is lengthy paragraphs without any economic meaning. Try to avoid it. All right, 2 more minutes, maybe 1, because I think you already have the slide screenshot by yourself. Just make sure that please don't share it to any other external institution. Keep it for yourself. That will be good. All right, guys. Thank you very much for coming. I think this is the real end. All right. Hopefully you're good. And anyway, enjoy the Easter break. Are you still in the Easter break? I don't know. But hopefully you get a good time before the exam. Of course, after the exam period, you relax a little bit for your vacation. And I hope everything will be good. Very nice to meet you. And thanks for coming to this webinar, especially for those who are already midnight. All right. If there's no problem, see you. Bye-bye.